First of all, it wasn't a half hour, it was an hour. You weren't supposed to be funny in that. Hours were serious, half hours were funny.
What did you call me?
Sissy fighter. I wish you could have seen yourself. Did anyone ever teach you how to throw a real punch?
Moonlighting was always so intense that it was hard to tell one intensity from another.
Stick around. There's going to be another murder.
People, cut!
I think I was 26 at the time, and ABC came to me and said, we want to make an arrangement with you. And it was a very innovative arrangement. They said, we want you to create a company, and we'll finance that company, and you'll make television programs directly for our network. And I was too young and too naive to even understand the enormity of what they were proposing, but I had an attorney who was very bright and said, this is a great thing. And so we entered into this agreement, and the nature of the agreement was that we would do 3 two-hour television movie pilots.
Moonlighting was our third pilot. We did 2 pilots that didn't sell. But I remember sitting in Jaime's Fish Market with Glenn, and we had just heard that Long Time Gone, our second pilot, wasn't going to make the grade. And ABC had asked him to do a detective show.
A gentleman from ABC came to me and said, okay, you have 1 show left and we're going to tell you what to do. I said, what do you mean? They said, we want you to make, and they called it a boy-girl detective show. I said, oh my God, you've gone to the wrong guy. I hate those things. They said, no, we want something like Heart to Heart. We'll get a girl like Cheryl Ladd, a blonde, and we'll find some guy who looks good in a tux, and that's the show you're going to do. And I said, really, you've come to the wrong guy. I have no interest in doing that. I had done it very briefly on Remington Steele, and somewhat against my will when I did it then. They said, well, that's what you're doing. We don't care what you do with it, but that's what you're doing. And all I heard was, we don't care what you do with it.
And that was the beginning of it. He left there. I'm sure he sort of debated because I think he was disappointed the other shows hadn't gone, and he really didn't want to do the conventional show because he doesn't know how to do conventional stuff.
Glenn and I had worked on 2 other unsold pilots, so we knew each other very well. I had tremendous respect for his writing and could tease him about some of it. So the relationship was excellent, and when it came along, it was one in a series of inevitabilities.
In the description, initially, I was reminded of Remington Steele, and thought, well, he can obviously write that sort of thing, and it would be a change of pace. And I loved working with him, and Bob was going to direct, so, I said, of course. And I remember in his description of it, you never really got what he was going for. And when I read it, I thought, well, this is really different.
About halfway through writing the pilot, when it occurred to me that I was probably writing Sybil Shepherd. I mean, I had a really strong image of her in my head, less so from Last Picture Show, curiously, which for me didn't loom as large as Taxi Driver and also The Heartbreak Kid.
I was very impressed with Glenn, and, I was curious, because he said to me that when he started writing the script, that he just started thinking about me for the part, and then he figured, well, why not try to get me? My agent said to me, I have 50 pages of a script. I know it's not the whole thing, but I want you to read it, because you might just really like it. I read it, loved it, and went to meet him, he and Jay Daniel.
And we had a meeting at a restaurant that no longer exists called Le Serre, which was a very fancy French restaurant, the kind of place that intimidated the hell out of me back then, in the Valley. And Jay Daniel loves to tell the story that she walked in and my chin hit the table, and I said something intelligent like hamada, hamada, hamada. She looked at me and said, it's a Hawksian comedy. I had absolutely no idea what that meant. And of course she was referring to Howard Hawks.
Then I explained to him about certain movies that have inspired me, that I had almost studied religiously, like that Hawks had directed Bringing Up Baby, His Girl Friday, and I suggested that we see these movies because Glenn was already writing this incredibly fast repartee that was so wonderful, like what's in so many of the Hawks movies.
Unlike any other show, our scripts were twice as long as the average episodes on television, and I think a lot of people didn't understand that, perhaps at the network standpoint at first.
It had to be fast-paced. I mean, it was really a densely written show in that way, and so we had to keep going at a clip, which is fine for me. As you can see, I talk very fast anyway, and I'd only been out of New York for a year, so No problem. This is slow for me.
City of Angels Investigations. Lost or stolen property, our specialty. You dropped it, we'll spot it. He cheats, we'll peek. Little one gone, we'll find him before dawn.
When I first saw the rhyme in the pilot, and again, there was not that much, Mr. Pester didn't have that many, you know, I'm not complaining, she just didn't have that many scenes to explore, especially in the pilot in the first year. So the rhymes were it, and I thought, what kind of person rhymes on the phone?
It seemed like when we were doing the pilot that everybody was talking 3 times as fast as you normally would in real life, you know. And now, looking back and viewing the pilot again from a distance and knowing the episodes that we did subsequently, the pilot actually seems a little slow compared to what the episodes were.
What are you angry about?
Why am I angry?
I heard the kids singing when you came in out there. Good golly, they
Listen,
think
pal,
you
you're
are the
gonna
greatest
rot in
boss in the
jail.
world.
And then when you're through
Man, I
rotting in
love it
jail,
here.
you're gonna rot in
See the
hell.
office we fixed up for you out there? Mauve.
I want it
one of my
back.
favorite colors.
Now!
There was an evolution. There was something different going on while editing this series that set it apart from every other show on television. And what we learned in the editing room was that the only rule that exists was that there are absolutely no rules.
I had never really worked on a television show. I had done a couple of scripts for Taxi. I worked briefly on Remington Steele, so I didn't know what the rules were. So it wasn't as if I was consciously like breaking rule. I truly didn't know what they were. I never really thought or imagined that the shows would A, get on television or be sustained for any length of time. I was just sort of giddy at the idea that we could go make a movie.
The music came to me from the pen of Holdridge, Lee Holdridge, and beautiful music. So when he called me, I was like, yeah, what? Yeah, what? And he said to me, look, this is just a pilot, Al. We don't know what's going to happen. It's going to be a situation kind of comedy, great mix with Sybil Shepherd, and I hear papers rattling. He's looking for the guy's name, the co-star. I hear papers rattling, and Bruce Willis. Yeah, okay, Bruce Willis.
We had it was one of the most exhaustive and most extensive casting searches, probably at least at that time I'd ever been involved in, and I'd done a lot of searches. I'd cast 2 other pilots for Glenn Caron. So Glenn had given me what was his prototype of, you know, if this was a theatrical motion picture, it would have been Jessica Lange and Bill Murray.
I actually remember an ABC executive at the time saying, Bill Murray has a movie career. I mean, that was sort of their take on it. We're never going to find anyone to fill this role.
When I walked into that room, when I went into audition, I said, I took one look at these guys sitting at this table, and I said, I ain't getting this job.
Bruce comes in and he has the scenes and he hops on the top of the counter.
He just came into the interview and took over, absolutely took over.
I turned to the other people in the room and I started to say, oh my God, blah, blah. And they thought I was talking about the guy before him. And I said, well, go get him, go get him, go get him. And no one knew who I was talking about, so I ran outside. He was walking down, we were on Pico Boulevard at that point. Right. Walking down, and I said, come back, come back, come back, come back, come back. And he came back in the room and I said, can you meet me at wardrobe tomorrow? Because he literally, all his hair was off, he had earrings, he was wearing battle fatigues.
I'd cut my own hair, I'd cut my own
camouflage.
hair.
And this is 1984, you know.
I was way ahead of California fashion.
And what's interesting is that show set a new standard for casting. So the next season, when I was being hired for pilots, at that point, the hardest thing to find is a young leading man between 30 and 35 who can do comedy, who can do comedy and who also has an edge. And Bruce became the prototype for the next pilot season.
Where on earth did you get those glasses?
Oh, these? X-ray specs. Pretty cool, huh? You must be wearing a lead dress. I can't see a thing.
We had Sybil. Sybil had committed pretty much on half a script. And I very much wanted Bruce. He was the only guy I brought to the network, and I realized the only way I was going to convince them was to do a screen test with the 2 of them, and Sybil wouldn't screen test. Not because she didn't want Bruce, but because
she was Sybil Shepherd.
And she confessed to me that she was terrified that if I saw her on film, I'd take the part away. So she refused to do it. So I then went about casting for someone to do the screen test with Bruce.
Rolling. Mark?
Who's the geek on your sofa? Relax. I just came by to return my company cars and tell you I think you're making a big mistake closing down the City of Angels investigation.
Then we took him to ABC, and his popularity was unanimous there, except for the boss. The boss didn't like him.
We take him in to Lou Ehrlich. And Lou Ehrlich says, I'm not knocked down to Ruben. He says, Ruben, this guy's not a leading man.
Television in those days was the Aaron Spelling version of TV and Dynasty and those kind of shows and Dallas and all that stuff. And Glenn wrote a script that I got immediately, and I know who this guy is. And but I certainly was not the Aaron Spelling type.
Parking lot, all blacktop and new. Drive on in, we're expecting you.
New TV show?
Feature film, Eddie Murphy, Bill Murray, Jessica Lange. Parking lot, you get it?
Kind of romantic, kind of exotic. People come to the parking lot all on their way to exciting places.
Finally convinced ABC to let me hire Bruce. I had to swear, I had to promise that I wouldn't let them get romantically involved in the pilot, because it was the feeling of all these gentlemen who ran the network that no one would ever believe that Sybil Shepherd would fall for someone who looked like him. So for me, it was this sort of like, you know, piece of subterfuge to sort of lay the track that they were going to get romantically involved.
Did you come in here to tell me something?
Me? You? No. Nothing on my mind except you. And this luxuriously thick head of hair.
But I gotta tell you, talking about the audition, the screen test, the real screen test, the cameras weren't rolling on it, happened in the elevator going up to go do the screen test. I was flirting with Sybil in a big way, and she was going okay. I mean, she wasn't slapping me, so that was always a good sign.
Let's talk about books. Me, I read left to right. How about you? Is that an amazing coincidence or what? All right. You want to get deep? Let's talk about sex. Who'd have guessed? I like sex, too. I think it's almost frightening how much we have in common.
I think the main thing that helped maintain that chemistry was the fact that Bruce and I were never lovers. And so there was always that tension, too.
Now, don't look back and try and see me. Just know that I'm right in back of you, and yes, I am looking up your dress.
I knew what I was looking for. I didn't know what it was going to look like. I didn't know what it was going to sound like, but I knew fundamentally what it was. I knew if you put that next to that was going to happen.
We were meant to do 6 episodes in this mid-season pickup, is what they called it, and we only ended up doing 5, which kind of set the tone for the 4.5 years of the show, because we never really completed our homework.
In the first show, the first sequence on Gunfight, the first sequence we shot with Bruce and Sybil was downtown in an alley. And I think everybody was still, including Bruce, I mean, I seem to remember a little bit of coaxing him out of the trailer, and we were going to shoot this sequence where he's teaching Sybil to walk, because she wants to go into this bar and he doesn't think she's going to know how to walk. He just lit up, and when he ripped her dress at one point, she started to crack up, and he said a few lines and she would crack up. And I think there's a kind of couple takes where you see her really genuinely losing it as Sybil Shepherd.
Now what are you doing?
Don't worry, this will only hurt a second. Not a bad attitude at all.
And I think it was somewhere in like the 3rd episode that it really began to, that's it. We finally got it.
Why do I let you do this to me? I see you coming, but I don't run. I hear your voice, but I don't cover my ears. Why?
The truth, it's not your fault. You can't help yourself. No one can. Me, I'm like
a traffic accident.
That was when everybody got the sense of, ooh, I think this is going to really take off.
It wasn't as if we knew we were creating it for some constituency. It was an oddball show for ABC, certainly at that moment. I was making a show that I thought would amuse me, the kind of show I would watch.
Got a great idea for a Broadway show. Lots of singing, lots of dancing, big sets, bright lights. Want to hear what it's called?
Train station? David, it was just a lucky guess. David, it'll never happen again in a million years.